I'm Mitch Ladd.
And I'm Matt Stevens.
And this is Comic Sans Drinks. So we decided to bring this back for a couple reasons. One, if you've been listening to our regular podcast, last month or so, we decided to switch up the format a little bit to give us all more free time. Well, I guess that was the idea, but in all actuality, it just gives Tabitha and Lydia more free time.
Yeah, it does.
It's fine, though.
That's all right.
Yeah. They've earned it. And so I was trying to think, well, we were both trying to think of like what could be a good topic for this first show back. And then here I am at Benny's. This was 2 months ago now.
Yeah, a little bit.
And I see the beer that we're going to drink, and it was just immediate. This is a comic that I have been trying to get you to read like for years now.
Yeah.
And this just kind of like all fell into place, except for one part that we'll get to here in a second because you're a little nervous.
I am.
It's fine.
But that's
it's fine. So, the book that we are reading is 8 Billion Genies. It's written by Charles Soule with art by Ryan Browne. So, a little bit of background on this. 8 Billion Genies. It's an 8-issue miniseries from Image Comics that ran from May 22 to April 23. In this book, everyone on Earth gets a genie at the exact same time. Each genie will give their human one wish whenever that person is ready. Chaos, of course, ensues. Each chapter of this book explores life on Earth 8 minutes after G-Day, 8 hours after G-Day, and so on. We see the characters react to the ever-changing world in both positive and negative ways. The series received a lot of positive views from fans. The collected edition has a Goodreads rating of 4.31 stars out of almost 1,800 ratings. The individual issues range from 3.5 to 4.5 stars. Also, earlier in 2024, Amazon Studios purchased the rights to 8 Billion Genies and is working on a feature film based on the comic.
Oh, all right.
Which, as somebody who currently, for various reasons, is trying to avoid Amazon, like,
yeah.
Granted, this is still pretty far out, so by the time this comes out, I will probably have already gotten back Amazon Prime and Kindle and all that kind of stuff, but whatever. But yeah, so I'm excited about that. Before we go any further, though, Matt, what are your spoiler-free takes on 8 Billion Genies?
It's hard to go spoiler free. I think just for the fact that based on the synopsis, every human gets a genie. Every genie gives one wish, and basically just use your imagination for the chaos that ensues. I really don't know how to give a more spoiler-free review apart from just letting your imagination go wild, because that's pretty much what happens. There is heart, there is soul, there is fear, there is anger, there is love, there is birth, there is death. It's like it encompasses pretty much every human emotion between the wishes, the genies, and the consequences.
Based off of that, it's pretty fair to say that you enjoyed it.
I very much enjoyed this. I have not yet put a Goodreads rating on this. I did read this about 2 weeks ago, and then I started rereading it over the weekend. I made it 7 out of 8 issues back through my reread before recording tonight, and I'm still not 100% sure where my rating would be. I think where it sits, the 4.1 is pretty accurate. I'm going to be generous, and my problem that I have with Goodreads is they only give whole stars, and I would probably go 4.5 on this. There's a couple of little things here and there, which keep it just from kind of being off the charts. But yeah, I very much enjoyed this. This is one of those that is being added to that list of I want a hard copy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want the bind up to be able to read this again and again. It's, I don't know. I just had such a good time with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I picked up the single issues as they came out and devoured them. There were a few like multi-month breaks during the
Ooh.
Yeah. And I do remember, reading a new issue and then being like, I don't remember what happened. Who are you people?
Yeah.
So reading it this way, I wanted to sit down and read the entire thing start to finish. Didn't happen that way, of course. But I think I ended up reading it over the span of like 3, maybe 4 days. Reading it that way, much better. And don't get me wrong, like I have been singing this book's praises ever since I first found it. But yeah, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later, but yeah, the rereadability for this book is just, it's so good. There are going to be things that you miss the first time, and every time you read it, you're going to find something else.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, this book, it's so good. And, if you haven't read this book, we are going to be going pretty well into spoilers here soon. I did try to not make as detailed notes as I've done in the past. Like especially with like Green Lantern, when we read that, I was basically going page by page. I did leave out a bunch of chunks in my synopses for this one, but I still found myself being like, well, this is kind of important to the story, so here we are. But yeah, so if you haven't read this book yet, I want you to pause this and I want you to find it and read it and love it, and then come back and listen to how much we loved it. So all that's to say, we are pairing this comic tonight with 8 Billion Genies from Half Acre Beer. And no, this is not a coincidence. The beer, which is a double IPA with an 8% ABV, is part of an annual collaboration with Ryan Browne, following Beer Hates Astronauts. From Half Acre's website, it says, quote, "This hazy DIPA hits you in the nose with huge tropical pineapple and mango aromas. Built on a bare bones Pilsner malt bill, the hazy trifecta of Strata, Mosaic, and Citra hops layer in strawberry, blueberry, and grapefruit flavors with an underlying green onion funk that balances those big tropical notes pint after pint." Matt, you're giving a look, and I'm...
I was here for everything until you said the green onion. I'm a little skeptical. I am a beer drinker, and for the very longest time, I have not drank IPAs. I remember waiting tables, and one of my guests referred to an IPA as the equivalent of licking a tree. And like for the longest time, that was the best explanation I could ever come up with when somebody asked me what it was like to drink an IPA. And I don't know what's happened. I guess I'm just getting older and my taste buds are changing. But I have found particularly the hazy IPAs that I do actually kind of enjoy. I don't think since I have delved into IPAs, I have tried a double IPA. So the double scares me a little, and I'm here for all the fruits. I'm here for the hazy, but the double IPA and the little bit of green onion that you mentioned, which I don't know that I'm going to get. I hope not. Yeah. But that concerns me a little. I don't want onion with my beer.
Well, for what it's worth, I don't taste any of those things. I was going to mention this later on because we are going to talk a little bit about the history of IPAs later. But I'm going to kind of out myself for a second. Like, I am an IPA drinker. And, you know, when people will be like, oh, what are the flavor profiles or what are the notes or whatever? And I'm like, I don't know. It tastes good.
Yeah.
That's my metrics for if I will drink a beer is, first off, is it going to taste good? And if it doesn't taste good, is it at least cheap? Those are about it for me. Yeah. Like, I know when a beer tastes hoppy, but if you ask me to, you know, tell you the difference between Mosaic and Citra hops, one might look like an orange. The Citra, I don't know. So I am not a beer snob. I just have the taste buds of a beer snob. So with that, these beers are not opened yet. I have had this before because when I picked it up at Benny's, I first off had to try it to make sure that I would like it. And then I drank all that. And then went to Benny's again. You know what? I will finish the story after we try this. Cheers.
Cheers. Ooh. Okay.
You here for it?
It's a little hoppy for my preferences, but I do really enjoy the hazy, and I don't get the specific fruit flavors, but I do get some of that fruit, like kind of in the background of it. Mm-hmm. But like you said, I am kind of a beer snob to the point where I worked at a brew pub, so we had to learn some of those things. So I can tell you can give me certain information about a beer and I can kind of tell you what you're going to get before it even hits the table. So I kind of knew what I was getting into with this, but yeah, I like it.
Excellent. But yeah, so to finish my Benny's experience, so when I had the first 4-pack and enjoyed it, I went back because at that point I had told you of my finding and I told you, hey, we're bringing back this this podcast and here's what we're starting off with. So the next time I went, they had 2 4-packs left. I was like, well, crap, I better get both. So I did. And these aren't cheap. These are like $15-$16 for 4 pints.
Okay.
Which more than I like to spend. But I digress. But yeah, so I bought the 4. One was going to be for myself, and then the other one I was going to save specifically for this.
Okay.
Because again, I was worried, that like if these are the last 2, we might not get anymore.
Well, especially if these are like a limited collaboration, you don't know what the timeline is on that.
Exactly. And the Half Acre's website, it didn't really say like how long it's been going on or when. And obviously with something like this, it's going to end up being like while supplies last, but whatever. But yeah, sure enough, next time I go into Benny's, fully stocked. So
Of course there
yeah.
is.
So that 4-pack that I had saved for us, I no longer saved for us, but
It's already been enjoyed.
yeah. Before I broke into that, though, I did check the website to make sure that they still had it in stock. But anyway, I digress. So before we get into the book, we're already only 15 minutes in. It's fine. Before we get into the book, let's talk about the creative team for a little bit. Charles Soule and Ryan Browne are two powerhouses in the comic book world. Before getting into comics, writer Charles Soule graduated from Columbia Law School and eventually started his own firm, concentrating in immigration law, transactional law, and corporate law. His comics life started in 2009 with the release of Strongman, a story about a luchador turned hero. He would go on to write for many different publishers, and when I name some of these titles, just keep in mind, this is like a drop in the bucket of stuff that he's done. So, he was written for Oni Press with Letter 44, DC with Swamp Thing and Red Lanterns, and Image with Undiscovered Country and Curse Words, which is also with Ryan Browne. However, his biggest workload has come from Marvel, where he's written on She-Hulk, Daredevil, Inhumans, Star Wars Poe Dameron, and the trio of Death of, Hunt for, and Return of Wolverine. He's also served as a legal consultant for MCU's She-Hulk Attorney at Law, and as a creative consultant for Lucasfilm.
Nice.
Yeah. Ryan Browne has been working in comics since the early 2010s, although League of Comic Geeks credits him as a cover inker in 1992's The Wild West Cowboys of Moo Mesa #1 for Archie Comics. I don't know if that's just like an algorithm error or if he really has been in comics that long, but either way, that's phenomenal.
That's wonderful.
He has done variant covers for a ton of books, but he is the artist on such titles as a run of Quantum and Woody from Valiant and Smoke and Mirrors from IDW, as well as the aforementioned God Hates Astronauts from Image. He was also the writer on Project Superpowers Hero Killers from Dynamite. So Soule and Browne will team up for a third time next year on The Lucky Devils, which is about two demons who try to start a revolution in hell. To accomplish that, they'll manipulate two normal, ordinary humans.
I'm already here for that.
Oh yeah, like didn't even have to tell me the creative team on that, and I was just like, that sounds interesting, especially after reading their work with 8 Billion Genies. Absolutely here for this. Did you ever read Curse Words?
I did not. So I discovered Charles Soule when I had gotten back into buying single issue comics, and I started picking up, I think at that point it was his run on Daredevil. So I've read his stuff with Daredevil. I've read some of his run on Inhumans, and then I was already in for the Death of Wolverine before I realized he was writing it, but that just kind of sold me even further. But all of those things kind of led me to look into other stuff that he has written, and Curse Words has been on that list that I'm like, I really should pick this up for quite a while.
Yeah. And especially with this creative team, Curse Words is now very high on my TBR.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Especially rereading 8 Billion Genies. I'm just like, I am now like completely enamored.
Yeah. Yeah. This is one of those books that will you can read. That's one of those wonderful things about comic artists and writers is that you can have read nothing else of theirs, and you can jump into any of their books or their stories or their plot lines or arcs or whatever. But this is one of those where you would read this, and if you don't immediately want to go and read and see more of their collective work or their work individually. Like I don't understand. I don't understand how you wouldn't want to.
So with that, let's start talking about the comic. So 8 Billion Genies, it spans 8 issues. So we're going to, break down each issue. Like I said, I've tried to not be as in-depth as I have in the past, but it's fine. So the bulk of issue 1 takes place in the Lampwick Bar and Grill, owned by Will Williams. Birthday boy Robbie, who just turned 12, comes in to pick up his dad, Ed, who has had way too much to drink. Brian, Alex, and Daisy, a.k.a. the Bada Bangs, are setting up for their gig at the bar. Wang and a very pregnant Lai Fing come into the bar by mistake. They were looking for the Lamplight, which is across town. Then, in France, a baby is born, bringing Earth's population to 8 billion, which causes every person on the planet to receive their very own genie. The genie is there to provide one wish. Will immediately wishes for no wish made outside this bar can affect this bar or anyone or anything inside it. Within the first 8 minutes, the human population is down 1 million people, and the genie population is down 2 million. The first issue ends with a glimpse of how people all over the world are using their wishes. So I really, I want your opinion more so than mine, just because this was your first experience with it. Like, what were you thinking as you were reading this?
So I'm going to be 100% honest. I was completely oblivious to the fact that the birth of that child in France is what signaled the coming of the genies. Like, they talk about it a number of times throughout the run, about how once the population gets around 8 billion, I don't think they ever specifically say like 8 billion is like a hard cap, but like it's mentioned somewhere around 8 billion is where this happens over and over again. So I 100% missed that the birth of that baby is what set all of this in motion. So there you go. I'm just a little dense, apparently. But the one thing I did pick up on my second read through, and I think it's in the first issue. Yes, that there is a calendar behind the bar. This also happens on 8/8.
Oh, of course it does.
So I was like, well played. Like, there are Easter eggs like that all the way through this. And that was just one that I found. Mm-hmm. This is a great start. I do enjoy this. It's the funny thing is so it takes place in Michigan, and I read some of the back stuff, and the Lampwick is exterior. It's just a design that they had. The interior is actually modeled after a bar in Chicago.
Oh, really?
Called the Empty Bottle.
Okay.
But the exterior of this bar kind of looks like a place that Tabitha and I stopped on our vacation in Michigan, and I kind of had to chuckle when I got to that first page. I'm like, wait a minute, because that was also in Michigan. Something's weird here. But this first issue is a good introduction. It's a good starting point. I think it does a really good job introducing all of our key players, and their roles and what we're going to see from them, as we go through.
Yeah. What do you think of the design of the genies?
I love that. That was one of my notes, is that I love how each genie is basically wearing what the wisher is also wearing. Like Alex in the band, he's got this skull on his t-shirt. So his genie, which also happens to be on the beer can, has that skull logo on it. You know, you see it with other characters further on, you know, suits and ties, facial hair. They mimic whoever their human is. And I love that. I also enjoy how they kind of took your classic genie and quite literally flip-flopped it. Because you think about it, you think about like Disney's Aladdin and the genie, and how like the little wispy part is at the bottom. The wispy part in these genies is like their hair. They all have pants on, which I also liked.
I mean, yeah, I saw that, but I really didn't even appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
quite literally turning everything on its head, which was like, I'm sure it was done on purpose, and I'm sure there was some conversation between the two of them on that, but I was like, it's clever.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's like the third thing that you've pointed out that I'm like, I didn't see that. Which goes back to what I said earlier. You can probably read this 8 billion times and still not catch everything. Yeah. But no, you're absolutely right. This first issue does a fantastic job of letting each character have their part of the spotlight, of these main characters. You don't end the first issue being like, okay, well, that person is extraneous. Why are they here? Also, like, immediately, like, Will is
different.
Yes. And he knows way more than he's letting on. Yeah. Which we will get to later. So, issue 2. In the first 8 hours, the human population has dipped to 7.2 billion, while the genie population is at 6.5 billion. Will, as it turns out, is a bit of a doomsday prepper, so the Lampwick has supplies to last them a long time. It also explains why he wished for what he did. He knew that a lot of people would use their wishes right away and use them, quote, to do some stupid shit. Daisy is bummed. She used her wish to get Brian to fall in love with her last issue. 2 problems. Alex just asked her out on a date. And also, she wished for it outside of the bar, which meant Will's wish made it null and void. So the Bada Bangs are kind of going through a rough patch. As we learn how some wishes can lead to unexpected consequences, Ed excuses himself to the men's room, where he has a heart-to-heart with his genie. He recognizes that he hasn't been the best father lately, so he wishes for his wife, Robbie's mom, to come back to life. Meanwhile, Dad-to-be Wang also makes his wish to be able to survive the new world and protect anyone he is with. This sets him on a journey to the Lamplight. As he leaves, the Lampwick gets 3 new visitors: Ernest Hemingway, Dorothy Parker, and Jim Morrison. 2 things. First off, as fun and as whimsical as this book is, the fact that the human population within 8 hours of this, we've lost 1 billion people in 8 hours. Mm-hmm. That is fucking terrifying.
But at the same time, you've got to feel like it's totally reasonable.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's where this is going to go. Yeah. Like, it's going to tank hard and fast.
Yeah. But still, just like, I'm glad that they didn't, but you could have easily turned this comic and like made the genies malicious.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, at the end of the day, they still kind of are, but not really. Like,
they're only as malicious as the wisher. In a lot of ways, they are, and I'm struggling to find the word for it. A product of their environment. They're the referee. In this situation, because they do mention that wishes will cancel out. Do we get that in the second issue?
Yeah, and that's kind of
I mean, you want to go ahead?
No, I was just gonna say, and I think we still kind of get it a little bit in the first issue when you've got Will wishing, for everything inside the bar to be protected. At the same time, you've got Daisy wanting Brian to fall in love with her, and she makes that wish outside of the bar. I think it gets really explained in issue 2, but you still see that in issue 1.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually did just find it. It is they go into the in-depth, the Genies go into the in-depth explanation as the President of the United States has one of his Joint Chiefs of Staff make the wish for the United States to be on top, calls Korea and says, screw you. And Korea's like, nope, we want all of your things, and especially Denzel Washington. Okay. Which, honestly, that makes a little more sense after having read that graphic novel for a regular show and his fascination with movie stars. But anyway, side note.
So, one other thing that I really love, you see it a lot throughout the comic, but especially in this issue, you have Ed and you have Wang, two fathers at very different points in their fatherhood, doing very different things to protect their children, and good on Ed for recognizing that he hasn't been the same person, and this could have, he did even say before he made the wish, I was like, please don't let this be like a monkey's paw type of thing, because it could have easily been a wish granted that nobody wanted, so still, maybe not in the heat of the moment, maybe not have been the best decision. I mean, as we'll see later on, it worked out.
Yeah.
But still, just to see these two fathers, do completely different things, but still doing it for their children.
Yeah. Their end goal was essentially the same, was to protect and complete their families.
Yeah. So, I'm also going to sound really dumb here, potentially. And it's one of those things I could have easily Googled as I was reading, but, you're here and you're a more learned man than I am.
Okay.
Who is Dorothy Parker?
I know the name, but I honestly am not 100% sure.
That makes me feel so much better.
Yeah,
you have no idea.
The Genies kind of make a comment about it, and I don't...
she's also an author, I think.
Yeah. It's further in.
Because I think it's Daisy who says something about how she was like an English major or something like that. So she knows who Hemingway and Parker are, but then she doesn't know who Jim Morrison is, which how do you not know who Jim Morrison is?
Right. I mean, that little Jim Morrison tidbit, I love how that comes back around much further in.
Yeah.
She was a poet and writer of fiction.
Oh.
1893 to 1967. She was known for her caustic wisecracks and eye for 20th century urban foibles.
Oh. Might have to look into some Dorothy Parker.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, I knew the name, but no, I was not super familiar. Looks like she had some run-ins in Hollywood too, so here we go. Okay.
So let's go ahead and go on to issue 3. This issue starts with Nigel, a glaciologist studying climate change in Antarctica. He wishes for a way to effectively pause climate change to be able to figure out sustainable solutions. As he celebrates his victory, he witnesses Santa and his reindeer get eaten by the moon, which, in this new world, sure.
Right, exactly.
So, in the first 8 days, the human population is now 6 billion, and the genie population is 4.9 billion. Back at the Lampwick, we learn that Ernest, Dorothy, and Jim were part of someone's wish. The genies call them remnants. However, after a performance with the Bada Bangs, Jim Morrison, I said explodes. He doesn't explode the way that you probably think.
No.
But, like, I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's not like his blood and guts go everywhere. It's not like that. It's just like...
And it's more aggressive than a poof out of existence.
Right. It's not like he just evaporates.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. We're going to go with explodes, but just know, like, that's not what we mean. Whatever. So we learn that remnants only stay around while the person who wished them is alive. This terrifies Robbie, whose mom, June, is now also a remnant. Wang is on his journey to the Lamplighter. He had to go there initially to meet Bernie Haysmith, who blackmailed Wang into handing over company secrets to protect his family. However, in this new world, he no longer feels threatened. Bernie tries to wish harm on Wang, but is killed before he's able to finish the wish. Wang returns to Lampwick with a message: wish for what the world is, not what it was. This gives Robbie inspiration for his wish to turn into a superhero to protect his parents forever. He leaves the bar to find somewhere safe for his family and meets other people who made the same wish. What were your thoughts with issue 3?
I think my favorite part about issue 3 is actually not just the appearance of the 3 remnants, but in issue 2, Ed wishes for June to come back to complete the family. In issue 3, you get the 3 remnants to show up at the bar and the explanation of what they are. So there is immediately this revelation of that same situation with Ed and June and Robbie. And you can see it on Robbie's face as he puts it all together too. And there's, I don't know how else to say it, but there's an intense gravitas to that moment when, like, they explain that they're only around, and Jim Morrison explodes out of existence, and Robbie's like, even his 12-year-old self is like, oh shit, like, I have to see how I can fix this.
Yeah,
it to me was one of the heaviest emotional moments as that realization comes through. But that's probably my favorite part about this is really enjoying how that was introduced and then explained. It's not retconning it, but like explaining it after the fact. So you have to put those pieces together. It's not just handed to you. The other thing I really like about issue 3 is seeing some of Wang's adventures, which really makes me just want more issues of just whatever the hell he went through to get across town. Like, because I made note of this. It took him 6 days to get to that other bar. He makes it back in 1.
Yeah.
So he hauled ass to get back to his wife, which, I mean, I get, but like, what the hell did you go through that took you 6 days to go and 1 day to come back? Like, I want more of that story.
Yeah. Going back to Robbie, when he kind of gets that revelation, like, I can't imagine being in his shoes when he realizes that, when his father dies, whether it's in the next hour or the next, 50 years, he's going to instantly become an orphan. Mm-hmm. Not instantly.
Again. Well, and he's going to lose his mother again.
Right. Yeah. Because, as we see, it's not necessarily like an instant that the remnant explodes or whatever, but it's like the clock has started. Also, I can't imagine being somebody who would wish for Ernest Hemingway to come back to life, to hang out with Ernest Hemingway, and Ernest Hemingway was like, I'm good, but brah, I'll see you later.
Right.
Like, that would suck so bad.
It would. Like it'd be like Daisy wasting her wish. Like, the hell did I just... Why did I do that?
Right.
Like,
Right.
Because from what I know of Ernest Hemingway, he was kind of an a-hole. So, like, that's to be expected, where he's like, piss off, dude. I'm going this way. Like,
yeah. But still, at least, like, let me come to the bar with you.
Right.
Like, have a drink. Maybe I won't sit at the bar with you, but let me just be in your presence. So, moving on. Issue 4. Which this one has probably one of the most heartbreaking moments. We'll talk about it later. But Robbie is with his new super friends and comes up with his code name, Sunman. However, while he and his friends wish to do good, they find out that there are others who wish to do bad. Brian and Alex still have their wishes, and June begs them to use them to help Robbie. They don't, but the Genies reassure June that Robbie is okay. Later on, unfortunately, Robbie does see the rest of his super friends die at the hands of the Royal We. The residents of the Lampwick take the next few weeks to get to know each other and bond. However, the one person who hasn't shared much is the bar's owner, Will. Alex pressures Will to open up and asks him questions like how he learned Chinese and how he got into doomsday prepping. Will gives him a very simple answer. Will's a genie. We learn that genies come around when humanity gets too full of wants and dreams, which is about the 8 billion mark. The genies come down and grant everyone wishes, which brings the population down. Will was the one to give the last wish at the last time, which meant he got to live as a human until it was time for another G-Day. At the end of the first 8 weeks, the human population is down to 1.1 billion, and the genie population is at 550,000. Robbie, who is still traumatized by his friends' deaths, flies away and lands at the door of the Idea Man. Couple things. First off, this series does such a good job of ending at, like, not like a cliffhanger to where it's you're angry that you have to wait 30 days or whatever for the next issue, but a cliffhanger to where you're excited. You got that with the Idea Man, at that last panel. The issue 2, when we see Ernest Hemingway and pals, it's like you now spend the next month being like, what? How does this happen? So hats off to them for that. 2 things that I want to bring up, though. First off, it's so sad. So like, I don't remember his name. I should have taken notes, but the leader of Robbie's Super Friends is very Captain America-esque, you know.
It's such an awful name too.
Yeah.
Like his superhero name.
When
King Power the Star.
King Power the Star.
Sorry,
Yes.
I had to go back and find it.
When Robbie's super friends get killed, he gets to the Star, and you know he tells the Star how like he's, you know, like Robbie's only 12 years old, and then the Star is just kind of like, heh, I'm only 11, and then dies, and I'm just like, ooh, what? What? So like, yeah, thanks for ripping my heart out. I appreciate it. So I went into the second reading knowing that Will was a genie. Mm. At what point did you know, or was it when he told you?
I don't think I knew before he said it. I knew that he knew something about the situation, but I didn't know what or how. But no, I don't think I knew until he just outed with it and said, I'm a genie.
Yeah. I was still a little surprised when rereading it because I had it in my mind that wasn't revealed until later. Like at this point we're at the halfway point in the series and you're already, you know, like unveiling like a huge plot point.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, like for whatever reason, I thought it was like issue 7 or maybe even issue 8 when we found out, but no, it was 4. So what were some of your other thoughts on this issue?
One of the things that is big in this issue is some of those battles between the superheroes and the villains, and that kind of amplifies some of the scenes that occur pretty much throughout the first 4 issues, throughout the whole series, but a lot in the first 4 issues. Some of the larger panels of artwork of all of the weird shit that's going on in the world and around, like as this is all happening, like you're seeing kaiju eating buildings, you're seeing buildings that are like ice cream cones and things. Like it's like one of them, there's a pumpkin, there's a volcano with eyes that's exploding in the background. Like one of the buildings is made of Legos. Like
I think it's this issue too where like the Gateway Arch has come to life.
Yeah, it's like a snake or a octopus or something. It's got snakes. It's got snakes for arms. It has eyeballs, and the bottom of the arch has teeth. Like it's just like, but like it kind of like those things happen. It's one of the things that I love in general about all of this, but like it happens a lot in this particular issue as you see some of those battles. This is also where you kind of see how even Robbie at 12 years old is forced to grow up much faster than he wanted to, he planned on, anybody else thought he would, because he's thrust into that situation and having to deal with what comes next.
Yeah. Going back to, you know, just like all the weird random stuff that we see in the background. Like I would have loved to have been in on like one of those creative meetings when they're like coming up with all of these things.
Yep.
You know, because like the pages where, you know, it shows the human and the genie population each issue, like the Earth in it's sometimes good, it's sometimes really bad, but the Earth is always different.
Yep, it is. It is.
Yeah. So at this point, we're at the halfway mark. Let's take a short break, and then we'll be back to finish this up. And we are back. I hope that you took this moment to grab yourself another beverage, whether it's 8 Billion Genies by Half Acre or some other drink of your choice. Before we go on to issue 5, I want to talk a little bit more, not just about Half Acre, but about IPAs in general. So when we do talk about IPAs, I could have gone, I did go down like rabbit holes, and this could have been a much deeper dive. This could have been like a 4-hour podcast. So I'm giving you the very, very, very abridged version of the history of IPAs, but I digress. So Half Acre Beer Company started in 2006 by Gabriel Maglario, based in Chicago. Half Acre's first beer, Half Acre Lager, debuted in 2007. Now, their annual production is 43,000 barrels. They have 5 year-round beers, including Daisy Cutter Pale Ale and Green Torch Lime Lager. They also have many seasonal and limited-time beers available. Half Acre has a tap room and restaurant at 2050 West Balmoral Avenue in Chicago. Since 2007, Half Acre has also sponsored Chicago's Half Acre Cycling Club, alongside other Chicago staples, Dark Matter Coffee, and Matt's favorite, Jepson's Malort. Have you had anything else from Half Acre before?
I have had Daisy Cutter.
Yeah, I know that I've had Daisy Cutter. Full disclosure, it's been a while, and I don't remember what it tastes like or if I liked it. But
it's one of those things that as I mentioned, my increased interest in IPAs, I want to try it again because I feel like I would enjoy it much more than I did in the past.
That's fair. That's fair. I never tried it, but I do remember seeing Beer Hates Astronauts. Mm-hmm. And I kind of got a chuckle then too, but like I didn't know that it was like the start of a like annual collaboration with Ryan Browne. And so like now I'm kind of bummed that I didn't try it, but at the same time it's like, especially after drinking this, I'm excited to see with what they do next year.
Yep.
So anyway, so what the hell is an IPA, let alone a double IPA? So India Pale Ales date back to the early 1800s in the United Kingdom. IPAs were originally exported to India, which was under the control of the British East India Company until 1858. Early pale ales were way less hoppy than the ones we're used to today. Early IPAs had only slightly more alcohol content than other beers at the time. However, more of the wort was fermented, which led to fewer residual sugars. They were also heavily hopped. This was done in part to help the beers survive the seas voyages better than other styles. Since then, IPAs have gone up and down in popularity. They've seen mild revivals in the 1970s and the 1990s. The U.S. saw a craft beer revolution in the late 20th century as brewers attempted to take beer styles that had fallen out of fashion and give them a facelift. Burt Grant of Yakima Brewing and Malting found that Chinook and Cascade hops found in Yakima, Washington, would give a strong flavor in an IPA. Today, an estimated 40% of American beers can be classified as an IPA. And according to the Oxford Companion to Beers, IPA is now the signature of craft brewers worldwide. Oh, does that 40% shock you?
Yes, a little bit. So one of my, I don't know, pastimes, if you will, is visiting craft breweries. And I have been to a number of them where probably close to half of their beer menu was IPAs or double IPAs or hazy IPAs of some fashion. Mm-hmm. So a little surprised, but also kind of not surprised.
Yeah. I lean towards not surprised because, just because of how, hugely popular they are. And it's kind of like what you said. A lot of times you'll go and a lot of, whatever craft brewery will have mostly IPAs, which I'm not complaining. In fact, I get bummed when I go to a craft bar and they've got 2 IPAs. And I'm like, fine, I guess I'll just have one of each and then move on. It's fine. So, a double IPA, which is also known as an empirical IPA, typically has an alcohol content above 7.5%. The double is thanks to the increased amount of ingredients, so not necessarily double the ingredients. Particularly hops, that gives it a higher alcohol content and richer hop flavor. The style is said to have originated in 1994 at the now defunct Blind Pig Brewery in Temecula, California. Mm-hmm. So, in doing this history, I guess I was just surprised at how old IPAs are.
Yeah.
I guess I shouldn't be because, there was a life before I came around. There was a world before I came around, especially before I came around and started drinking. And also before I started drinking IPAs, I get it. But at the same time, it's wow.
Yeah. I had a restaurant manager that was full of useless information. So your tidbit about basically hopping the beers in the barrels for the trip from Europe to India, I knew that, and I knew that was basically where India Pale Ales originated, and that was kind of how they got their name, was because of that trip and that style, and what emerged from the barrel was not necessarily what went in, but it was what was necessary to be done in order for it to survive that trip.
Yeah.
So
thank you for, those brewers way back then for figuring that out.
Right. The only other thing I can tell you that I don't know this for a fact, but this is my understanding as far as your reference to the different types of hops. Hops, in a lot of ways, if I understand it, are very much like local honey. Where you grow them, what you grow them with, give them different flavor profiles, different strengths or weaknesses. Cascade hops are very, very popular. Those are all Washington. Those are used in a lot of IPAs. Depending on where they're grown, gives you that in different combinations, then will give you different flavors.
All right.
So that's always the way I've understood it. It's very much like local honey.
I mean, Granted, I'm not much of a honey consumer, but I don't know that I really could tell the differences between honeys anyway. To me, honey is honey.
I mean, I couldn't, but I do know that, I do know that there's a difference. Kind of like how there are some allergists that recommend you have a little bit of local. If you have a really bad allergies, one of the things they recommend is you having a little bit of honey on a regular basis, because that honey is generated with pollen that is from your area. So it helps make you not immune, but builds up a resistance to those pollinators. So again, kind of along the same lines, it gets the flavor, it gets that scent, gives the, whatever from whatever's in the area.
So you silly billies, you started this podcast thinking we were just going to be talking about comic books and beer, and now you're learning stuff. Gotcha.
Boo-doo.
So let's go ahead and go back to 8 Billion Genies, the comic. So issue 5. We start in 1980 with the birth of Floyd Fawn. To say he was unpopular growing up is an understatement, which carried over into adulthood. When G-Day came, he wished for people to believe in him, and thus the Idea Man was born. Now, in the first 8 months since G-Day, the human population is 50.5 million people, and the genie population is 458,000. The Idea Man shows Robbie around his haven, Hope's Hollow. Robbie is sold, but the Idea Man says Robbie has to do some things for him before Robbie can bring his parents. Plus, they'd have a tough time surviving the scouring, a wish someone made to scour the earth of everything except havens, leaving the world a poisonous mess. We learn that when Lifing delivers the baby will also have her own genie, which will not be able to grant a wish until the baby is old enough to clearly express it. The baby isn't due for a month, but Lifing starts to have contractions. June, who was a midwife in her past life, helps to deliver the baby, but there are complications. Brian and Alex are the only ones in the bar with genies, besides Lifing, who is incapacitated. Wang begs them to use a wish to help, but they freeze. While Lifing and the baby pull through, the damage to the Lampwick family has been done. With the help of a team of lawyers, the Idea Man makes a very specific wish to bring the world back to life after the scouring. With it being safe to be outside again, Brian and Alex decide that they've overstayed their welcome and leave. Daisy decides to leave with them in order to keep the band together. Shortly after, Wang, Lifing, and Ting Shu also leave in order to give Ting Shu a better life. A couple weeks after that, Robbie returns for his parents, leaving Will on his own. This issue has one of the very few things that bug me about this comic. Why does Ting Shu have a genie? Ting Shu is not a human being at the time G-Day starts, and because of this, this would make me believe that, anybody who was, any woman who is pregnant at this point, that fetus will also have a genie. So then there are more than 8 billion genies running around.
Yes, but the genie is not fully formed until, Ching Chu's genie doesn't have form until the baby is born.
True, but what I'm getting is that there will be an influx of more genies, as it comes.
True.
So this is never 8 billion genies, like the title of the comic book and the beer suggest.
8 billion and 12.
Right. But no, outside of that nitpickiness, I do enjoy how we are seeing, now drama within this group. Things have been going pretty well, all things considered, for a while, and so you could tell that it was time to explore this new world. So while the circumstances are kind of crappy, it sets up for more more exploration.
Yep.
What other thoughts did you have?
So this issue has one of my favorite moments and one of my least favorite moments of the entire series. As a writer, I understand the addition of the Idea Man's backstory I just didn't like it. Like it's completely arbitrary. It's subjective. Like those 5 pages or whatever where you get him trying to get people to believe in him. I understand what it's doing. I understand why it's there. It pulled me so far out of everything else that was happening that it just, I don't know. It threw off the groove, if you will, that we were building through the first 4 issues. Like I said, I get it. I know why it's there. I just don't care for it. On the other hand, the very last panel where Robbie is carrying his parents away and he's got tears in his eyes, that is one of my favorite moments of this entire series. Like, the goal that he set out for, he found. He has a way to keep his parents safe, and he came back to get them. I do also enjoy the fact that, yes, after so long being in the bar, everybody's like, okay, thank you. It's time to part ways. It's time to explore what else is out there, and everybody goes their separate ways. Other small note, as much as I enjoy that the genies all look like they're Wisher or they're human, that page, which is the Idea Man and all the genies behind him, I love his suit. I think that's awesome that it
really
looks like the genies. I think that's fantastic. You get Robbie's cape looks like that later on. I think it's awesome. I love that touch. The mustache on the Idea Man's genies look like a beak. And I can't not see it that way.
Yeah, you're 100% right.
I know it's a mustache. I know that. But it looks like a damn beak. So there you go.
So, moving on, the next 2 issues, there's a lot to cover. Issue 6, it focuses primarily on the Bada Bangs. You have a couple snippets, a couple pages devoted to the rest of the cast, but this is very heavy on them. So, in the first 8 years, the human population is now 32.2 million, while the genie population is 316,000. Alex, Daisy, and Brian are in search of Fun City, a haven that focuses on creatives. We learn that Wang and Lifeng have settled in Ohio, helping to build a city there. Meanwhile, in Hope's Hollow, everyone is fooled by the Idea Man, except for June. Brian, Daisy, and Alex make it to North Carolina to a half-haven, half-remnant created by Alice Gutierrez. Over the years, we see that the Bada Bangs have made nice lives for themselves, each finding love and success with the band. However, we also see that Alice is sick, leading to the end of their haven. Brian summons his genie in an attempt to save his boyfriend, a remnant, but is unable to say the words. The band decides to move on in search of Fun City. Once there, they must audition to get into the haven. They're good, but not good enough. Daisy offers Alex and Brian's genies to the judges to get in, knowing she won't join them. They refuse, and Brian makes a wish that Alex's genie now belongs to all 3 of them, making it impossible to be used without everyone's consent. Because of this loophole, all 3 are invited to Fun City. A couple of just image notes or whatever. The very last panel, that is straight up Wizard of Oz.
No. Oh, yes.
Yeah. That is Dorothy the Scarecrow and either the Tin Man or the Cowardly Lion, take your pick, walking into the Emerald City.
Yep.
100%. Also, I don't think that it is, because I don't think that he could ever be this mean of a person. But tell me that one of those judges is not Weird Al Yankovic.
I will have to go back and look, because I don't know that I really... Oh, yeah. Yep.
Like, I read it as Weird Al and everything, but it's still like, Weird Al is probably one of the top 5 nicest people on this planet, so he could never be like that. But
we've got Simon Cowell, Weird Al, and I don't know who the third, who the girl would be.
But yeah, one other thing that, like, I guess I really enjoy about it is how they, like, don't really address Brian's sexuality. You know, it's a couple of blink and you miss it moments. While, you know, like, on the one hand, you know, like, maybe I would have liked for a moment, especially when Daisy, you know, had said that she had wished for, you know, Brian to fall in love with her, to get, like, an overt, like,
I'm
nah, girl,
right?
Yeah. Well, I would have liked to have that, but, like, at the same time, just to have, like, just like a completely normal, you know, like, moment, I thought was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. That is one of those things that I have noticed a lot more recently in fiction, not necessarily just in comics, but just in a lot of the fiction that I've been reading, is that an individual's sexuality or preferences is it's not a thing, it's just who they are, and it's mentioned in passing so that it's not made into a spectacle.
Right.
So, like, I don't know. I myself, I like that because it was just like an extra, it was an additional insight into who he is and who he was as a character.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I go back and forth and I'm torn because I do think that, like, and granted, this comic book is a couple years old, and, you know, like, back in the before times, but,
back in the day,
right? But no, still, like, even then, even now, you know, like, I think while not necessarily making a spectacle, I think it is still very important to have those overt moments, you know. But I don't know. I don't want to say they did it perfectly because, like I said, I do think that, like, you know, like a moment between Daisy and Brian where it was said explicitly or something like that, I feel like would have helped her to get over him, you know?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like I definitely am not mad at how they did it. Moving on, issue 7, maybe the saddest issue. At a lot of different moments. Spoiler alert, because this one covers the first 8 decades. By the end of this, basically everybody's dead.
We are the people, y'all.
Right, basically. So, in the first 8 decades, the human population is 18 million and the genie population is 213,000. It is now 90 years after G-Day. Lifeng, Wang, and Tingshu are searching for El Futuro, a haven that will keep Tingshu and her genies safe. In El Futuro, children's genies cannot grant wishes without parental consent. Years later, Tingshu, now going by Betty, and the other children are still angry that they won't have control of their genies until they turn 25. In Hope's Hollow, Ed suffers a fatal heart attack. June, knowing that she now doesn't have much time, searches for Robbie. She tells him how the Idea Man is a fraud and that it's time for him to be his own man, before exploding. The Idea Man tells Robbie to grieve his loss, but to be ready for something big. Later, Hope's Hollow is under attack, and Genies go to war. Hope's Hollow wins only because they have more genies. Betty and the other kids leave El Futuro, wanting to be able to live their own lives. El Futuro is attacked by Hope's Haven. Robbie, fed up with the idea man, however, hurls him into space. As she's dying, Lifing finally makes her wish for her daughter to survive. In Fun City, Brian dies after a life filled with love from everyone in the Haven. We also see that David and Alex have ended up together. 20 years after that, Alex dies, leaving Daisy alone with her genie. Decades after that, Robbie is now dead. Betty has lived a long life raising children and grandchildren, but she tells her genie that it's time to live free. Before I ask your overall thoughts?
Nope.
Nope, not like that. Ed and June's living room. Does that look familiar to you?
Probably should. It's like, are we talking Family Matters?
That is the living room to Family Matters.
Like, wait a minute.
And
oh shit! It's even got the door in the back.
yeah, and if you still weren't convinced when you flip the page when June is searching for Robbie, who is asking her like where she's going or whatever?
Oh my god! That's amazing.
There is a cameo from Steve Urkel.
I totally missed that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's genius.
Yeah. I now remember like noticing that the first time I read it, but like completely forgetting about it. So when I reread it the second time, I was filled with so much joy once again.
It's just another nod to Chicago. That's fantastic. I love that.
Yeah. It was so great.
I was like, wait a minute. No way. Yep.
Yeah.
It absolutely is.
Yeah. 100%.
Bravo.
Yeah. Which, like, I mean, Ed vaguely looks like Carl Winslow. I don't think June ever really looks like Harriet, but so I don't know if that's if it's because of the Ed Carl ness of it, but yeah, I loved that. So, how sad were you at the end of this issue?
This was a rough one, because you lose Ed, you lose Brian, you've got Betty leaving her parents. Side note: early on, you meet the gentleman that runs El Futuro, and I was like, wait a minute, why are we meeting this guy now? It connects later. He's the head of that. So well placed, I guess. That's why you get that foreshadowing, if you will. Yeah, there are so many emotions through this one. Although I think my favorite might be when Robbie finally, like, I know June explains it to him, but it opens his eyes to everything that's been going on. And when he hurls the Idea Man into the moon, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
The line from the genie at that moment is one of my favorite lines in this entire book. He's hurtling into space. He can't breathe because he's now breached the atmosphere. And the genie, and he goes, I wish. And the genie goes, dang, so close. But all things considered, like, you had plenty of opportunities and you blew it too bad. Like, it was just karma.
Yes. I think in this issue.
Oh, yeah, you do.
Like, he he at one point, like one of the genies, like just straight up flips him off, which is just phenomenal.
He does. Yep. I think I took a screenshot of that because I was like, wait a minute, is that really what just happened? Yep, he does. Yeah, it's as they get attacked.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, wait, what's going on? He's like, nah.
Yeah. Seeing Robbie finally having enough of the idea, man, so cathartic.
Mm-hmm.
And also so cool to see the moon that eats people come back.
And then the genie and the moon fist bump.
Yeah. Yeah. But like, and we kind of talked about earlier how much Robbie has had to grow up before he ever should have.
Mm-hmm.
And Robbie mentions that to the idea of man, how like he's had to do things that no kid has ever had to do. Yeah, it was a really powerful moment. This entire issue was powerful. You know, seeing Betty, you know, like she was ready to, you know, cut off ties, go no contact with her parents, and then, well, she does go no contact, but not the way she thought.
But like the way that is relayed by the like the visualization of the genies, I didn't catch this until the second read. All of those genies in El Futuro that are the genies for the kids have earmuffs.
Mm-hmm.
And when the parent dies, those earmuffs shatter.
Mm-hmm.
And that was how Betty realized that her parents were gone. Like, again, I didn't catch it the first time. The second time, that emotion hit much harder.
Yeah. Yeah, it really, really did. And then, like, it was just, you know, like, obviously, every death is going to be, like, kind of sad. But still, like, with both Brian and Alex, we don't see Daisy pass away. But with both Brian and Alex, you know, like, they both had lives well lived. They were well loved. And then also the same with Robbie. Robbie became a hero. He was already a hero, but, like, he truly became one with the rest of his life.
Yeah.
You know? All right, we are now at the final issue. The genie who will become Will Williams is flung to Earth in 1200 AD after granting the final wish. In human form, he is able to appear however he, or sometimes she, chooses. We see Will in many different lives, never staying in one place too long. He realizes that the human race will be on track to 8 billion quickly, so he kinda sorta brings about the Black Plague, setting the next G-Day back at least a century. He went through his power-hungry phase before turning to self-improvement and maybe becoming William Shakespeare. Over time, Will fathered and mothered thousands of babies, and in 1822 settled in what would become Michigan and opened a bar. Now, more than 700 years after G-Day, Will is catching up with Daisy, who, as a result of unintended consequences, is immortal. A century after that, Betty, also immortal, arrives at the bar, determined to be the person to make the final wish, even if she has to kill Daisy to do it. After talking, Betty realized that it's Daisy who is actually worthy of making the final wish, which will ultimately kill both of them. Daisy is ready to make her wish that everyone would love the way they want to be loved. Matt, what were your thoughts on this final issue?
Initially, I kind of like those few pages of the Idea Man's backstory. I was not super sold on the inclusion of the backstory of Will Williams and his time learning to be a human in between being a genie and then where we find him at the Lamplighter. But looking back over these pages and seeing all of his different existences as him as not the background characters, I'm appreciating it much more. I do enjoy the fact that he initiated the Black Plague just to delay G-Day. That regardless whether I liked it or not, that did make me laugh. The big thing for me in this issue is honestly, I guess, the showdown, if you will, between Daisy and Betty back at the Lamplighter. Like, that second half of this issue where they're discussing things, they're talking about how everything happened and where they've gone and what they've done, and like there's some animosity and some anger between the two of them, like especially Betty towards Daisy.
Yeah.
Like early on in that meeting, but the way that it all boils out is just so well done. And at the same time, you've got Will, who doesn't look a day over, a day over G-Day. Like, he looks exactly like he did then.
Which is interesting because, like, how, like, he took on so many different forms in, kind of the same time frame. Or at least a similar time frame.
Yeah. I don't know. It was... I enjoyed it. The art of the genie, like, growing and becoming a tree,
like their real form,
like, that was beautiful. Like, it just huge credit to Browne for his art on that. It's absolutely wonderful. It does an incredible job, really, honestly, bringing the whole 8 issues full circle. And I know that is story-wise done for a very specific reason, to start and end at the same point. But the fact that you have 2 of those characters that were at the beginning and at the end, and to see their transformation over the course of these 8 issues is also wonderful.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I really loved about this issue, when, Betty and Daisy, I don't want to say that they were fighting, because it was more Betty that was fighting. But when Betty realizes that it's Daisy who should be the one to make the final wish, she says how, like, I came in here trying to kill you and you offered me a drink. Like, that just shows, the type of person that Daisy is, and how, like, that in a perfect world is the way to solve problems. I mean, not necessarily with booze, but but like offering a hand instead of a fist, I guess, is a better analogy. Another little thing that, like, me being nitpicky, like, Will says how he is the parent to was the parent to thousands of children. Were those children part genie? I mean, clearly not, because it wasn't, brought up, but, like, that, I feel like that should have been, like, addressed,
Yeah. It was, I guess, one of the small plot holes, if you will. Because, at the end of that issue, he's like, I'm a genie. Okay, but you are not, because you got a genie to make a wish. Because as the last genie, you become a human to, like, it doesn't... I understand what's happening, but it doesn't completely connect and doesn't completely track.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, that's one of those things we've mentioned a couple of times that maybe could have been explicitly said, but that's going to be, my headcanon is that, like, he was granted a genie, if nothing else, to keep up appearances.
Right.
Because, like, clearly it's not, like, against the rules to announce yourself as a genie, but, like, that would have brought up a lot of questions immediately if he wasn't given one.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Issue 8. I feel at the end of the day, we could have ended at issue 7.
Yes.
We didn't. Now, let me preface this by saying, like, I'm glad that we got issue 8. I'm glad that we got the, everything tied up that needed to be tied up. But it could have ended at issue 7. I don't think we needed that 8th issue.
Yeah.
I'm glad we got it. And I'm glad that we got to see Daisy, like, truly get her redemption 800 years later, but it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's for me, it's that second half of the issue which makes issue 8 worth the read. And I think, like, when I talked about at the beginning about, this being about 4.5 stars for me, it's those couple of pages of the Idea Man, and honestly, it's the first half. It's the fact that, like, issue 8, like, it was done as an 8-issue arc because 8 billion genies, 8's that mythological number in Asian culture. Like, it rounded everything out. But I'm with you. Like, at the end of the day, you almost didn't need issue 8. You could have expanded some of the story in 1 through 7 into 8 and not had what we had.
So that kind of brings me to our ratings, not only of the comic book, but also of the beer. So after all this talk, you're still sticking with 4.5.
I am because I think, especially after discussing it, and then your point that in some ways issue 8 is unnecessary, feels harsh.
I think you're right. It does sound harsh, but it's not necessary.
Right.
But it's still, it's one of those things, like, it's the cherry on top of a sundae. Do you need that cherry? No. Are you really glad that it's there? Hell yes.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is, like, especially that second half of it between Daisy and Betty, like, that conversation, the way that all goes down, Daisy getting the final wish. And it's not that Daisy gets the final wish, but, like, how she gets the final wish is what's important. And, like, that's the part that, again, I feel like this is not the right word, but, like, redeems issue 8 for being there. So, yeah, I think I do have to settle with 4.5. Okay. Or, I guess I would do 7 out of 8 genies.
I didn't even think to go there. So, yeah, I'm changing it. Because even though, yeah, I had, like, couple little nitpicky things, I initially went with 5 stars, but I'm going to adjust that to 8 genies. Because even the small things that irked me about this book, there were still so many other things that I just genuinely, truly love about it. The art is phenomenal. Ryan Browne does such a great job with, conveying emotion, not just with humans, but also with genies.
Yeah. Like the time they get drunk.
Yes. There's also that time when, like, when the Bada Bangs, they're like, under fire, and
Let
like
him
the
get shot.
gets shot, and he's like, just kidding, guys, and that also kind of goes to Charles Soule's storytelling, because it's just like, everything was so done so well and brought together so wonderfully, like, it had the perfect mix of humor and heart, and like it would pull at your heartstrings and also make you angry, and just like it did everything that it needed to. This is one of those books, like I mentioned earlier, it's definitely rereadable. This book has stayed with me, since I finished it. Those of you who know me in the real world know that I have way too many comic books. And I have wanted to reread this, but I haven't, because I have so many books that I haven't read the first time. So having this opportunity to reread it, like, was phenomenal for me. And even still, like, I don't know that these books are going to go back in their file cabinet right away, because I kind of want to reread it again. This is one of those books, like, I have recently decided that I have too many comic books, and so I am going to do a huge purge. Matt will talk off air. If there's something you want, you just let me know, buddy. But 8 Billion Genies is not going to be part of that purge. Yeah. That is going to stay with me until I am, put on fire ceremoniously, much like Brian was. This book was just so good. Would highly recommend it to anyone, So what about 8 Billion Genies, the beer? Again, going out of 8 genies.
Going out of 8 genies. I will go 5 out of 8. It's still a little hoppy for me, the double IPA. I enjoy the hazy. I enjoy the fruit flavors, like the backside of it. If I were to find this again, I would drink it. I don't 100% know that I would go out of my way to Binny's to see if I could get another 4-pack. But I have enjoyed it more than I expected. I don't know if I'm quite ready for a lot more double IPAs, but this one was worth the drinking. So yeah. I think I will go. I'll go 5 out of 8 genies.
I'm gonna go 6 out of 8. And it kind of sucks because the reason why it loses genies really has nothing to do with the beer itself. Because the beer itself is very drinkable. Like if I hadn't shared this 4-pack with you after you left tonight, I might have had those other 2 beers. I don't know. And as we were recording this, it is now 9:20 in the evening, and I have to work tomorrow. Still might have had both those beers. But where it loses points for me, I kind of touched on it earlier. The price point is more than I like to spend, especially for 4 pints.
Yeah.
And also the fact that it's a limited time beer, because I know that eventually I will never have this again. And that eventually is coming sooner rather than later.
It's like that Barbarian Red.
Exactly. And when you mix both of those two, the price point and the limited time, and me knowing that there will come a time when I won't have this again, I will probably spend that amount of money to buy, I would say, probably at least 2 more of these 4-packs. Like, it's going to happen because it's so good. But yeah, so that's where I'm at. All right. Well, this went longer than it should have, but shorter than I expected once I was done with my notes. because I don't remember if I said this at the beginning or not, or if I even told you, but like when I all was said and done with my notes, I wrote more than 3,000 words.
Yeah, Tabitha gave me the word count.
Yeah. Oops. That's me being like, hey, I want to talk about IPAs. My bad. So we will be back next month with another comic and beverage. Will not be a beer next month. I already know what I'm going to. I already know what the drink is going to be next month.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
I will tell you so that you know, but you guys will
is this
find
holiday
out.
themed?
Yeah. Of course,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
You guys will find out next month. So, with that, as always, drink responsibly.
And we'll see you in the funny pages.
That's going to do it for this episode of The Geek Awakens. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, shoot us an email at thegeekawakenspodcast@gmail.com.
It would be a shame if you didn't follow us on Facebook and Instagram at the Geek Awakens Podcast or on Twitter at Geek Awakens.
Theme music created and produced by E. Cannon Beats.
Our logo was designed by Shay McCain.
Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time. We're boldly gone.